Hello everyone, John12 back here again with another video, and today I bring you once again a top 5. Yes, last week, well actually for the past several weeks, I've been doing my countdown to the greatest, or my favorite, as I like to consider the best of the Dragon Ball fights. And throughout the entire Dragon Ball universe, there's been tons of great battles that take place, and I gave you my top 5 GT fights, my top 5 DBZ movie fights, and my top 5 Dragon Ball fights. And today, it has come. It is the end of... It's an end of an era, if you will. I mean, like, I'm giving you my top 5 Dragon Ball Z fights. Yes, it's been a long time coming. I've been doing tons of top 5s dedicated to Dragon Ball Z, and anything that I like about Dragon Ball Z. But you know what? To continue on more stuff, it's time to end it with just a Dragon Ball Z video, and I'd also like to make it very perfectly clear for all the subscribers at home to know that even though I'm ending it with this, doesn't mean it's the last DBZ video I'm doing. You know, obviously I still have tons of other DBZ related videos to come out, and not to mention my DBZ podcast that I'm still working on, so don't worry, there's tons and tons of other DBZ or Dragon Ball, content to talk about and to make. So just because this is my last top 5 DBZ video doesn't mean it's my last DBZ video at all. It's just the last of the top 5. So, because I obviously have a lot more other top 5s that I want to, get up to. So, anyways, that's either here or there. So let's get right down to it. First off, or secondly, I'd also like to make it perfectly clear that this is subjective. It's my personal list. As you all know, all Dragon Ball fans have their own specific list to the greatest fights that they love from Dragon Ball. And even though mine may seem a little cliche to you in some areas, it's my favorites. It's my top hits. It's the greatest of the greatest to me of the greatest fights. And also I have honorable mentions to, practically all the fights that I love. So let's get right into it. Okay, coming up at number 5 has to go to Piccolo versus Android 17. It's just... Piccolo versus Android 17 kind of just reminds me of a specific point in time where Piccolo was a dominant character. You kind of get lost with characters like him where, are they as important as they were? But you know what? Piccolo really stuck in there with, from ending of Dragon Ball and, going throughout his entire run with Dragon Ball Z, he still stayed a very dominant, fearless character / fighter alongside other various fighters. Like you have Goku and Vegeta and Trunks and Gohan who are like Super Saiyans, and then you have, Piccolo who's still, the same guy that he was before, but, he's amping it up. And plus, I always loved the fight between him and Android 17. Piccolo's always had really great fights in DBZ. He's had his fight against Frieza. He's had his fight against Cell. And, you know what? I just always had to place this one as one of my favorites because it's not only badass, but it's also the music is awesome, the cinematics are awesome, just the whole scenario between the end where, ironically, Piccolo and Android 17 have to, team up to, take on Cell because Cell just breaks in and just stops the fight, head on and just tries to absorb Android 17. So they have to, team up and, stop Cell. Even though it's, of course, inevitably a loss, seeing as how he absorbs 17. But what are you going to do? Anyways, Piccolo versus Android 17 is always one of those badass fights that you just cannot, deny. And even though he has had other really badass fights, like I mentioned, with Frieza and Cell, and Perfect Cell, rather, he's still an awesome fucking character, and I just love his battle with Android 17 the most. And it's also, if you look at it realistically, it's actually his last real epic fight with a major villain, so. But anyways, moving off of that, let's get into another awesome character, which has to be, coming up number 4, Vegeta versus Majin Buu. Of course, this is a little later in the sagas, Vegeta alone as a character is a badass. He always has some of the best fights. And he's always taking on, the main villains head on, ironically. But I think his battle with Majin Buu is one of my favorites. Even though he's had other great fights, throughout the entire run of his character, he's had badass fights. He's just getting in there and just pounding the shit out of everyone he's fucking going in with it. But with Majin Buu, even though it may not be his most famous famous fight in the series, it's one of my favorites because it just the meaning, the details, and the overall like scenario that happens just always had a like really, you know, hard good place in my heart. You know, it always stayed there where it was like, you know what, Vegeta is awesome and I love him, you know, because he knew he could not beat Majin Buu. He knew he was inferior to Majin Buu, but he continued on, and he wanted to prove himself not only that he could be a hero, but also there was always a way, or at least there was always a chance to make amends for all the terrible shit that he'd done, which is, you know, fighting for something greater than just, you know, power or to be the greatest in the world. It's you're fighting because you want to save the people you love, you know. And I love that whole moment where he's about to just kill Majin Buu and himself, ironically, with, you know, his self-destruction move, which, you know, inevitably was the wrong choice, but at the moment it was awesome. And he just says that, you know, he's doing it for Trunks and Bulma and even Goku. So I don't know, I just love the whole scenario, and plus Vegeta's just so awesome when he's fighting him. It just looks so badass. I don't know, Vegeta, I always loved Vegeta. As you all know, he's my second favorite character of all time in the Dragon Ball universe. So I don't know, what are you gonna do? But his fight with Majin Buu, even though it's not the most famous or the most epic, it's definitely badass. It's definitely fucking awesome. It's fucking everything a Dragon Ball Z fight should be, and plus I just love the whole meaning behind, you know, the metaphors and the meaning behind the fight, where it's like, this is the first time Vegeta is fighting for someone other than himself, and it's just not only a huge shocker, but it's just empowering to see and feel it, you know. And plus, the ending is always depressing to me, you know, where you find out, oh, Majin Buu is still alive, but Vegeta's dead, and you see that whole, like, you know, sequence with him as a statue. I don't know, that always depressed me, people. I don't know about you, but that depresses me. That depresses me with such... When I saw that on TV when I was a child, that depressed me. When I saw that sequence of Vegeta as a statue, oh my god. My heart felt like it was just gonna just pop out of my chest like the chest burster in Alien. I don't know. But moving off of that, let's move off of that and go to number 3, which has to go to Goku versus Frieza. Yes, Goku versus Frieza, one of my favorite fights of all time. You know, I mean, like, it's hands down the longest fight of all time. And Goku definitely has the greatest fights out of the entire series. You know, no one can deny that. He has the greatest fights in Dragon Ball GT, the movies, you know, the specials. He has the greatest fights of all time. But I think his fight with Frieza is one of those definitive moments where you see that Goku is the hero, and that he will go through, you know, hell and fire to, like, defeat his enemy and prove that he is the superior being. And plus, I like the fight with Frieza because it not only marks, you know, a very epic fight in the first real epic planetary, you know, explosion type shit, but also it also marks the first fight that Goku actually wins in the series. If you look at it realistically, Goku has never really beaten a major villain in DBZ up until this point, like, 1-to-1. You know, with Raditz, he had to have Piccolo destroy him. With Vegeta, he let him go. You know, and finally he's up against the third, you know, major villain, which is Frieza, and he finally beats him. And I like that type of stuff. Even though he's beat minor villains along the way, obviously, you know, like Nappa and the Ginyu Force, you know, and stuff like that. But this was the first major villain that he actually officially beat. And plus, I just love the entire scenario. I mean, like, it just goes on and on and on and on and on. I mean, like, I'm telling you, people, it was the longest 5 minutes of my life. I'm telling you. It's the longest 5 minutes of my personal life. I don't know how many times I saw the Frieza saga on TV, but it destroyed me. I mean, like, every fucking... And it was on a loop. I don't know about anybody else, but back in the day, they would loop sagas like a motherfucker. They would just loop it and loop it and loop it, and I feel like, God, is the Frieza saga ever going to end? But, nevertheless, it's still an awesome, badass fight. Frieza is still my favorite villain of all time. And you know what? The transformation sequence with Goku becoming a Super Saiyan for the first time, hands down, badass moment of all time. Most badass moment. Shocking, amazing. Oh, just fucking awesome. I don't know, that's just my personal opinion. And plus, Frieza, it's just so cool. And he won't give up. Like, even though he knows he can't beat Goku, even though he knows that he's inferior to Goku, he just keeps going at him. He just won't stop. He just continues to try and kill him. Even though Goku, consistently throughout the battle, once he transformed to a Super Saiyan, mind you, just continues to taunt Frieza. It's like, you're not even a challenge to me anymore. I mean, come on, that alone is just badass. Only a badass hero says that in a series, you gotta admit. But anyways, Goku versus Frieza, hands down, one of my favorite fights. And plus, it's just so beautiful. The cinematics, just shoot at each other like fucking crazy, just punching the living shit out of each other. Blood's going everywhere. The planet's about to explode. And that's another thing that really is icing on the cake. There's a time limit on the fucking fight. That's the crazy part. No other fight in the series has a time limit. Get that through your head, people. This has a time limit. The planet's about to explode. Goku needs to find a spaceship to escape. And plus, this is pre-instant transmission, so he couldn't just, fly out of there and just, zoop, he got the fuck out of there. He had to fucking beat Frieza and get the fuck out of there. And I don't know. Just, in all, amazing fight. Beautiful. It's just so beautifully done. It's just awesome. And plus, you just have to love the meaning, behind it all as well. Goku, Frieza finally being defeated by a Saiyan. Goku being the first Saiyan to ever defeat Frieza. Hands down, awesome. Badass. But anyways, let's move off of that and go to my number 2 pick, the second most badass fight in the entire DBZ series. It goes to Gohan versus Cell. Yes, Gohan versus Cell is badass. It's very similar to Goku versus Frieza, where you have humongous stakes, on the table, and whether or not anybody wins is just it's imperfect to whatever anybody's trying to do, because Gohan wants to destroy Cell. Cell wants to destroy the planet. And you just have these characters where it's like, what, someone's got to give in. Someone's got to beat the other, because if no one wins, things are just going to go crazy and they're just going to go off and kill everybody. I don't know. That's how it kind of feels when I watch it nowadays. But anyways, I don't know. Gohan versus Cell is just badass. And I almost replaced this with Goku versus Cell, because when you rewatch Goku versus Cell, that's a pretty badass fight. That almost got on my list, but I decided just to replace it with Gohan versus Cell, because, I don't want to make this all about Goku, obviously. And plus, unlike the other series, DBZ actually lends itself to have other major characters fight. You have Piccolo fighting, you have the Z-Warriors fighting, you have Vegeta fighting, Trunks, Gohan, Goku. He's not the only person who's fighting. So, and plus, this is Gohan's actual first real major fight. And plus, there's so many amazing things that happens within the fight. You have the Super Saiyan 2 transformation. You have the Super Kamehameha threat. Power balance. That. Oh my God, the 2 double Super Kamehamehas. Oh my God, that shit. So fucking awesome, so beautiful. It's just nice, the father and son Kamehameha. Shit, my hands are starting to shake just thinking about it. It's so awesome. But anyways, nevertheless, Gohan has always been one of my favorite characters, and plus, a lot of people consider him the best character of the series. And plus, I can see why, seeing so if you watch this fight, you already know what Gohan's all about. You already know why he's awesome. You already know why he's a badass fighter. And plus, come on, that whole sequence between him and Cell, when Cell destroys Android 16 and he finally becomes a Super Saiyan 2. Oh shit, that's so badass. I love both versions. A lot of people consider the Japanese version, I myself as well, but I love both versions, the English and Japanese. So badass. But nevertheless, Gohan versus Cell is awesome. It's so beautifully done. The cinematics are awesome. Cell is obviously outclassed and towards Gohan, and Gohan is just a badass. He's just pounding at him. And plus, hell, you have to love the father and son Kamehameha, the double Kamehameha shit. So awesome. And even though Goku does sacrifice himself in between the fight, it's still an awesome fight nevertheless. And I don't know, I always loved it. But you know what? Before I give you my number one pick, people, let's give it up to the honorable mentions. Yes, the badass, the bestest, is that even a word? Who cares? The best, most badass fights that did not get on this list. Vegeta versus Raccoon, love it. Goku versus Cell, so fucking badass. Almost made on my list. I mean, like, come on, the instant transmission Kamehameha, oh my god, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful, I mean, like, if that was on the big screen, money on the table, let's go. Anyways, moving off of that, Goku versus Ginyu, Goku versus Nappa, which is pretty badass, Piccolo versus Frieza, Gohan versus Frieza, super badass, Vegeta versus Frieza, let's see, the Z Warriors versus Nappa is pretty badass. The Z Warriors versus Cell Juniors are pretty badass. Let's see, Goku versus Goku versus Piccolo, which is pretty badass. Even though it's filler, I still love it. It's badass. Gohan versus Majin Buu or Super Buu, whichever you want to go. I mean, like, there's so many Boos. But what are you gonna go? Gohan, Ultimate Gohan versus Super Buu, pretty badass. Gotenks versus Majin Buu and Super Buu, super badass. I almost put it on my list, but it's a little too comedic for my taste. So, Super Saiyan 3 Goku versus Kid Buu, super badass, amazing. Vegeta versus Kid Buu is also badass, and also Super Saiyan Goku versus Super Saiyan Majin Vegeta, so badass, really awesome. I mean, you have to admit, even though it's inferior to the first fight, it's still badass. But guys, I guess it's gonna fucking finally come to the creme de la creme of all great battles in the Dragon Ball Z saga, in the Dragon Ball Z mythos, in the Dragon Ball Z series in general. It's finally come to my number one pick, and of course, some of you may find it cliche, some of you might find it a little too obvious, but you know what? You gotta give it up to the original, greatest, most baddest, fucking awesomest fight of all time in the Dragon Ball series overall, which is Goku versus Vegeta, the original fight. It's the most badass fight of all time. I mean, like, I would put it in my top 5 most badass, you know, battles in fictional fights. You know, I mean, like, you got this one. It's just it takes the cake, you know, and I would put it in, like, the movie industry, the anime industry, comic book industry, you know, any type of fictional fight in history. This one goes right down up to it. It's just so awesome, and plus, it just sets the standard of, like, all the most baddest, awesomest fights in Dragon Ball Z in period, you know, because before that, you never had, like, an epic, really big fight. You had the Goku, Piccolo, Raditz fight, but that was nothing in comparison to this one. I mean, the first time I saw this was like in 1996, and ever since then my life was completely changed because of these two characters, Goku versus Vegeta. What a perfect archetype, just an amazing synopsis, and plus the battle just feels like it just goes on and on forever, you know. It's just, and that's the greatness about Dragon Ball Z. You know, the fighting in Dragon Ball Z in comparison to the rest of the sagas or the rest of the series in general always had this despair amongst them. You know, you always had this despair in the air where it's like the whole atmosphere of the fight is just, if you don't win, it's you know, it's the end of the world, you know, and that's how it feels for, especially in this fight. I mean, like, Goku is just beating the shit out of Vegeta. Vegeta's just pounding away at Goku, and it just never ends. It's an non-stop, unforgettable, you know, unforgiven fight that goes on forever, and you know, it just sets the stages for the rest of the series, and of course creates the best rivalry in the entire Dragon Ball, you know, obviously storyline, which is of course Goku and Vegeta. You know, it's just so badass, and plus, just overall, it feels awesome, you know. I mean, like, I've loved this fight ever since. I mean, this fight got me into Dragon Ball Z. This fight is the definitive moment that made me be like, oh, I gotta be a fan of this shit, because this is just awesome, you know. Because, I mean, like, I back in the day, you didn't have this shit on Blu-ray. You didn't have this shit on the internet where you can, you know, download it and, like, live stream it like you do with, like, these fucking bastard kids today. No, back in the day, back in the 90s, I had to fucking go to my local video store and rent fucking bootleg videotapes of this fight. That's how fucking old this shit is, and that's how fucking awesome I love this shit. It's just, So amazing. I mean, Goku versus Vegeta is definitively the best fight, not only in Dragon Ball Z, the entire Dragon Ball series, anime in general, and of course, it's just hands down one of the best fights in of all fictional fights. So personally, I just had to put it up there, and it may be a tad too cliche for some of you, but you know what? You just have to give it up to that fight. What is the number one fight that comes to mind when you think of Dragon Ball Z? And that is Goku versus Vegeta. Nothing else. Maybe Piccolo versus Frieza, or Gohan versus Cell or something, but hands down, it has to go to Goku versus Vegeta. But that's going to be it. You know what? I've been doing this for a very long time, top fives. And you know what? I think it's a good way to end it, with my top 5 DBZ fights, So I hope everybody enjoyed. And of course, in the comment section below, please give me your top 5 DBZ fights. I know there's tons of great battles that take place in Dragon Ball Z alone, so I know a lot of you have a great top 5 to add along with mine. But overall, that has been mine. And personally, give me your personal thoughts on my list, and of course, subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already, where you get all tons of great stuff like this. And once again, I want to remind everybody that just because this is my last top 5 Dragon Ball Z video, that does not mean it's my last Dragon Ball Z my last Dragon Ball Z video in general. I'm still gonna make DBZ related topics and stuff, and DBZ will possibly be here and there, in my top 5s when it comes to anime in general, but overall, it's going to be the last one, and I hope everybody enjoyed this specific, list, and I hope everybody enjoyed the last several, top 5s that I've done dedicated solely to Dragon Ball Z, because I've been a Dragon Ball Z fan ever since before I could walk. I've been a fan since the 90s, and it's been such a great ride. And you know what, Goku versus Vegeta is hands down my favorite fucking fight of all time, and it's the best, overall. And plus, come on, you just gotta love it. Like every single sequence that happens in the entire fight is just so badass. Every single point in there, so amazingly done. And I love the fact that in the fight itself, you get a feel of the landscape within the characters, because usually you focus on the characters, but the great part about this fight in particular, you have this great atmosphere, you the Rocky Mountains and everything. Oh, it's just so beautifully done. It's so beautifully animated and put together. I don't know, that's just my personal opinion. And plus, you want to know why this had to be on my list? Because when I was a kid, the most baddest, awesomest part that happened in the fight had to be the sequence where it's really well done, and you can look it up when you're done listening to my ramblings. Basically, go to Goku versus Vegeta, the full fight, and then you'll see that sequence where they're obviously, grinding it out at each other. And there's a sequence where Vegeta gets on top of Goku, and is about to just double hit him over the head, and Goku just headsbutt him. Just headsbutt the living shit out of Vegeta's cranium and just starts pounding away at his body. Such a badass sequence. I mean, that hands down defines, why I love this fight. But that's going to be it. I hope everyone enjoyed this top 5, and this has been, once again, my top 5 Dragon Ball Z video. Yes, it is my last top 5. And this has been John